Let's move on. We got to talk about Prigozhin. So I did a breaking news segment about Prigozhin whenever the crash actually happened. There's now various explanations for what happened to Prigozhin's plane. I think what everyone can agree on is that he is dead. So what exactly happened? Well, you can guess. Intel sources tell us there was a blast on board the plane. Others tell us he was hit by a surface-to-air missile. One thing for sure, he was definitely on board that flight with multiple other actually innocent people, including a poor flight attendant, actually, who didn't do anything wrong and who was blown out of the sky. We have all the video of the plane coming, crashing and smoking, crashing down on a routine flight from Moscow to St. Petersburg. Putin is now offering his condolences to Prigozhin after his untimely death. Let's take a little bit of a listen to that. Let's go ahead and play this, and I will speak over. He says, quote, "If Wagner members were on board, as the report suggests, I would like to acknowledge that these people did make a significant contribution to our joint fight against the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine." Clearly, they're sticking to the rhetoric that he's been keeping up against Prigozhin. They also had previously said, Krystal, that they'd used genetic tests, DNA, in order to confirm he was on board there. In terms of continuing, he says, quote, "I have known Prigozhin for a long time. He made some serious mistakes in his life, but also achieved a lot, both for himself when I asked for our joint cause, like in these recent months." Recall that he was actually Putin's chef after previously serving as a prisoner, and then built himself up into a military oligarch. He says, quote, "He was a talented man and a skilled businessman," offering him up some praise. I think we could say relatively confidently, I hope the Russians don't sue us, is that he probably had something to do with the death of Mr. Prigozhin. You can be the guess. You can give the ultimate guess. One interesting thing, though, is about what Prigozhin was actually thinking and what was in his mind. Why did he think that he would be the exception to the rule and would live? And, in some respects, Krystal, some Russian traitors, oligarchs, and others who have betrayed Putin, it takes a while for them to die. Sometimes they'll give him a year. Sometimes they'll give him 2 years. In some cases, they gave him 8 years. Prigozhin was actually killed very relatively quickly for somebody who had so betrayed Putin. I think it was because it was so public and such an international humiliation to launch the coup against him. But there's always been a question of why did he turn around? I said during the segment, it's like, if you're going to take Vienna, then you got to take it, man. But when you turn around, like, why did you think that Putin was ever going to let you live? Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. Some of it does come back to his overall leadership of the Wagner Group and some of the people who were actually loyal to him. We have this from the Wall Street Journal, the quote, "The last days of Wagner's Prigozhin, quote, on the run, the paramilitary chief crisscrossed his global business empire, desperate to show that he was still in control. He said, quote, I need more gold." He had spent some time in Africa, the Central African Republic, for example, where one of his first clients for the Wagner Group company, several thousand people who were there. He'd crisscrossed and traversed. He had told various other people that things were fine with Putin. But, at the same time, he also seemed to indicate he did know, Krystal, that he was in danger. And so the portrait that emerges here is he was kind of frantic, trying to shore up his position. I think he saw himself as a projection of Russian power through the Wagner Group, through a lot of its military operations in Africa and in Syria. And he was trying to make himself indispensable to the Putin regime, even though he had launched a coup against them, and then ultimately, was killed after only a matter of months after launching this coup against Putin. So the entire thing is really surreal to see Putin fake mourn him. I don't know. I really wonder, because Russians aren't stupid. Ordinary Russian, they're like, yeah, he was obviously killed by Putin. Why do they put up this whole song and dance? I'm just not even sure why it's necessary.
There's a lot about this that I have trouble wrapping my head around. I don't know why he ever thought he was going to be able to be successful with the coup in the first place. I know once you start, man, you can't stop. We said at the time, this man is not going to live a long life.
Right.
Now, I didn't think it was going to come this quickly. I thought it'd be years down the road. By the time people had sort of forgotten this incident and moved on, you'd see a footnote in the New York Times or wherever saying that he had been assassinated, poisoned, pushed down a window, whatever, or fell to an untimely death out of a window, as seems to happen to a number of these Russian oligarchs. For it to be this quick And this really brazen is quite remarkable, but that makes sense to me because Putin is trying to, reassert dominance, reassert control, etc. I do not understand why Prigozhin thought that this deal would hold up. I do not understand why he still felt at liberty to fly around and try to keep his control over the Wagner Group, his control over these various interests, especially, around Africa and the Middle East. Clearly, the Kremlin had been trying to kind of take over the business operations that Wagner had previously been leading. But they say that Prigozhin refused to retire quietly in that Wall Street Journal piece, crisscrossing the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Africa in a bid to keep his business links alive, posted audio messages offering mercenaries to the military regime that had recently taken power in Niger, a video of himself in Mali posing with a sniper rifle and 4 magazines strapped to a bulletproof vest, vowing to, quote, make Russia even greater and Africa even more free. So why did he feel at liberty to do these things? I mean, did he just basically have a death wish? Did he, really feel like he had that level of understanding with Putin where he could really trust his word, et cetera? I don't know. A lot about it is still very perplexing.
You can, you can just surmise it takes a certain personality to be a global mercenary head.
Warlord.
Cutting people's heads off and stuff inside Ukraine. It takes a certain personality to survive in Putin's Russia, to rise from chef to oligarch, to kiss ass, to megalomaniac, to warrior, to coup. Sometimes people are actually very not rational at all. So
that's true.
You can see here, with him, it seemed delusional. In many cases, the delusions that can actually get you a tremendous amount of power very often will end up being your downfall. And it seems that very much was the case. Overall, though, in terms of what matters, it does seem there's a temporary Wagner memorial inside of Russia. Some people were mourning him in Moscow. There were things coming, but overall, we haven't seen any change in the front line. Wagner has largely been amassed into the Russian armed services. You've not seen any major, change in terms of battlefield preparation or any of that. So also the commanders on the ground who seemed somewhat sympathetic to Prigozhin, they've been fired and or unceremoniously dismissed. And Putin, in many ways, seems stronger than ever. He killed his main rival out in the open. It was a blatant signal. It's you cross me, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to blow you out of the sky and then fake mourn your death on national television.
Yeah.
I can't think of a more bloodthirsty thing you can do, a more cold thing also that you can do in terms of a message.
Yegor's analysis of Prigozhin has always been that he was basically high on his own supply.
Yeah, I think that's
that he had delusions of grandeur, that he really bought the hype around him, which was in some ways hype that was created by the Russian media propaganda networks. So they sort of built him up as this heroic figure. And then he was very, omnipresent on social media or whatever. And so he really misgauged the actual level of support that he had among the people. Again, these things are very hard to judge from afar, how he felt and how people feel about him and how they felt about him then, feel about him now, et cetera. But that was his analysis, is that, he had this sort of Potemkin village of social media and actual media support. And then once that media support is pulled, there's really not a lot left there in terms of his genuine support among the populace. And so when he starts this failed, coup attempt, which, he denied it was really a coup attempt, but I think we all saw that in real time. Once he starts down this path and he doesn't see the people rallying to his cause in the way that he thought, kind of burst his bubble, he freaks out, he makes this deal with Putin. That's the best that I can surmise of what happened here, but wild series of events.
Yeah, I guess we get to live in interesting times.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.